Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us at Magnifying Our Impact. And today I'm interviewing a great man who, over the last year, has really inspired me, not just from an ability to be able to build rapport and relationships in his own team and the people that he has around him, but also globally. And, you know, there's a few people, as you know, that you meet in your life that think very differently. And Frithjof is one of these people to me, is that he doesn't say, you know, we can't do this and we can't do that. He just says, why not? And to me, he's created an opportunity, and with his family, created an opportunity to really heal our planet. And that's not an exaggeration, because the reach that Frithjof has now is very impressive, but their vision for where they want to take their organization and want to take all of us on their journey with them is truly inspirational. So to not steal too much of his thunder, I'd love, Frithjof, for you to give us an introduction to where you've been, how you've built an amazing organization, and talk to us then a little bit about, give us some background, but then talk to us about the vision that you have for all of us in the future. So first of all, thank you very much for joining me. Just give us an introduction to where you've been and where you're going.
So the last 13 years, actually, I was just supporting children, because it happened that my son had a wonderful idea inspired by the Peace Nobel Prize laureate Wangari Maathai about tree planting. And he wanted to plant trees. And so I said, wow, this is a resonance, very strong idea. And I'm supporting this idea. And after 13 years, we got somehow the breakthrough. This vision of a boy with the support of his family, of course, went to become a mainstream on our planet. So we had to solve the scientific background. We had to solve the questions, how many trees we can plant, how many carbon dioxide they would absorb. And we had to build up an organization. We had to build up the technique. So we had to do all this by ourselves as a small organization. And now it happened that in Davos this year, in Davos 2020, in January, they said they took over the idea of Felix. Felix is my son, and took over the idea and said, okay, let's take over his vision to plant 1 trillion trees until 2030. This was a vision Felix had and shared with the world in 2011, and 9 years later, the World Economic Forum took over the idea. So this is splendid, this is wonderful. And now the work starts, and we are prepared to and working hard to make this happen. Because carbon dioxide is a big problem, and trees are the only machines that take out carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere.
So, Frithjof, you know, you're very modest in the way that you describe this, and there's been an enormous amount of work that's gone into the last 13 years, but just give us a bit more of an idea of what you and your family have achieved over the last decade.
So actually we started and Felix became, after 1 year as a 10-year-old boy, he became pretty famous, and we've been very shocked as parents, because there was one weekend with 500 media responses about Felix, about our son. And so we decided to protect him, and we said, okay, the best protection is if we spread the idea to many children, that it's not only Felix, but that there are thousands of children. And we ended up with now 88,000 children that have been part of a workshop, of a daily workshop, a 1 day's workshop. 88,000 children in 74 countries are ambassadors like Felix, and they are spreading the word. So they go out and give presentations and share the idea of reforestation. So this is one thing. Another point we did, we started our own reforestation. So since 5 years, we plant on our own foundation-owned land in Yucatan. So we have 25,000 hectares of degraded forest, and we are some more than 100 employees who are replanting, who are planting and reforest this area, we are planting about 3 to 4 million trees every year. And another point we did, we solved the scientific gap, because nobody knew how many trees are growing on the planet, how many trees we can still plant, and what these trees would make as a difference. So we had to find a scientific group, we had to get the finance, and happily we found these guys in 2013, and now they are working at ETH Zurich with the Krauser Lab, and made last year a wonderful study that if we plant these trillion trees that are still possible, they would absorb 25%, a quarter of the human-made carbon dioxide. So they will not solve the climate problem, but they will give us 15 years, because in 25 years we will go through the 2 degrees. Yeah, we will reach the 2-degree limit in 25 years. And if you plant this trillion trees, we will get another 15 years to stay 40 years from now under the 2-degree limit. And yeah, the trees give us time to become prudent, to do what we know, what we have to do. And finally, a fourth element, what we did since 3 years, we are developing an app. And with this app, everybody can find a project, a tree planting or reforestation project, any place on the world. And this app is itself open source, and the use of the app is for free. So the tree planting project, the tree planting organization that is uploading a project can do it for free, and any donor on any place of the world can make a donation to any of these tree planting organizations, tree planting projects, just for free. So all the money will go 100% to the organization. So these are the 3 elements or 4 elements we did in the last 13 years. It was an awful lot of work. And we are an independent organization, and we try to get companies to, we want to try to motivate companies to make a pledge how big their forest will be, a company forest until 2030. And each company can define the size of the forest by itself. And we are just the monitoring. We are just checking that they really do what they promised. And we are trying to do a Forbes forest list that is not important what is the wealth of a person, but what is the size of the forest the company or the person is reforesting. Because we cannot reach the trillion trees without the money of the companies of the wealthy people. The governments do not have enough money.
That's quite incredible, because what you've done over the last 13 years is you've inspired 88,000 children through a comprehensive training program to be able to go out there to their schools, to parent groups, to clubs, to associations, to give talks on how we need to protect our planet and to reforest the planet. And then with those 88,000 children, your son and yourself and the rest of your family and your team have persuaded the World Economic Forum in Davos and all of these countries to back you with a major goal of planting 1 trillion trees over the next decade. And so, Frithjof, there's something very special in that. And to me, there's many special things about what you're doing, but one of the things that really strikes me is that many of us human beings on the planet, we think about small to medium-sized projects. You know, I'm proud of what I've done, that I've spoken at hundreds of conferences and I have helped in West Africa a little bit, but I haven't yet. I'm starting to, but I haven't thought truly globally. And, you and your son, from the age of 10, 11 years old, have managed to think at a planetary scale and encourage all of us to think bigger. And so talk to me about your mindset. Talk to me about this, because what inspired you when you were younger, or where does this global mindset come from inside you?
I don't know. I actually don't know. My dream always was something about the global justice. It was always thinking about the planet, about the injustice of the planet, and how to make how to balance this, what we call globalization. It was not when I was a child thinking about globalization, but I felt it is very unjust, the different living conditions on the planet. And in my today's word, I would say the future is not divisible. It's not, we have one future. There's a saying, you're sitting in one boat. I think the picture is better if we say we are sitting in a luxury cruise ship. Yeah, the whole population in one big cruise ship. A few parts of us are sitting in the luxury cabins up on the top, and more than half of the passengers are below the water. Yes. In the trunk, in the basement. And if the ship will sink, we are all sinking. We are all going to go underwater, and we don't realize that we are sitting in one boat, in one ship. This is the feeling that the global injustice feeling at the beginning. When I was a child, I thought it was unfair, and we have to do something. And I have a gene, some kind of a defected gene, that I always feel responsible of something. Yeah, something. If something happens and something is not going in the right way, I feel responsible for it. So this is a mistaken gene. So I took over the responsibility also for this global injustice, and I thought, okay, you have to do something about it.
I've been fortunate enough to come and see, two different areas of your operation. I've seen, of course, I've met many of your team in different locations, and I've been truly inspired by the people that you have around you and the energy of the young ambassadors that I've met. And so talk to me about how have you built your culture? Because many people listening to this interview are running social enterprises, they're running charities, they're running companies, and sometimes we can't get the culture right. And you've managed to create a really empowering group of people who really have the same vision. And so talk to me about how you've created that winning culture.
I think, as you mentioned, I think a common vision is the most important thing. That you create a common vision, and that you also, and it was not technical, but it was not a technical way that I tried to create a winning culture. I was just convinced about a vision. I was convinced that it's possible, and it is possible. It's really possible. We can make the world a better place. It's not so complicated. It is man-made or human-made, that it's a wrong system. And humans, we can change it in a right system. So all the mistakes on the planet are human-made. So, and we can change it. Nothing is set in stone, and we still have enough time to change it. But we have to hurry up. We have to do it, and by creating a vision, a common vision that it's possible. Yeah. I think this is the most important thing, that you create a common vision. And then I think you have to act in a high level of transparency and honesty, because you create trust with your team and your members. And then the third element might be to define ways how you can reach, how it is possible to reach the goal. And it is possible. You just have to find your way. With Plant for the Planet, I made many other organizations before, but with Plant for the Planet, it was not a strategic way that we started with academies, but the academies we started, we did because we wanted to protect Felix, and then we went straight forward and we created this critical mass of children and youth. Yeah, I think you have to set a goal, define a goal together, and then on the way, every year, every half a year, you should check whether you're still on track, you're still
Yes.
aligned with your goal, and then coming together as a team, define, work through it. And then you shouldn't discuss too much. You should really go and work for the goal.
One of the things that I love about Plant for the Planet, your organization, is that it's very simple and it's very straightforward. But underneath, you have very technical scientists and Sagar, who, you know, produced the app, and you've got very, very clever people surrounding yourself that can put everything in place. But the goal for us to understand it is two things, is to empower the youth and plant 1 trillion trees. It's that. It's not, you know, complicated. Everybody knows. You know,
Exactly.
It's very simple and very straightforward. You need to empower the children and plant 1 trillion trees. And that, to me, is harder than we realize, to have such a simple goal, but have very clever people working on it. So you've got that, but I think you've got that balance, you know, very powerfully, because so many of us in life, many of our problems, I think, is that we complicate the world. We make it so difficult to understand. And planting 1 trillion trees and inspiring young people to talk about planting 1 trillion trees is a simple focus.
Yes, but this idea didn't happen. It was not a strategy that we said we wanna do it. It was just a homework of Felix. So he came up with the idea of planting trees because he had a role model. So we took over the idea, and then the question raised up how many trees you can plant. And if you think big, you also try to answer this question. And then if there is a potential of 1 trillion trees possible, why should you stop with 900 billion if there's 1 trillion possible? Because you need all this. So if you go on a logical way, it's normal that you have to go for the 1 trillion trees.
If people have a dream, they're inspired to create something, what do you think is most important when they're at the beginning? So say there's people listening to this that want to help, that want to help the health of the planet, or they want to help cancer, or they want to, help with AIDS, or they want to help with their community, or they want to help cure the coronavirus, whatever it is that people want to do, or they want to build schools or educate, whatever the project is. What's the most important piece of advice that you have for people when they're at the beginning of their journey?
What I did, I was always focusing on one thing. I always has in my life at the same time one priority. And I don't know why, but maybe it's also a mistake. If I have a goal, I just go for this goal, and I work like hell to reach this goal. And I cannot have two goals in my life at the same time, because I would get crazy, because I would it would probably kill me, because I'm so much focused to reach the goal that I have to put all my energy on one goal, and then trying not to dissipate your team's energy because you have 2 or 3 or 4 goals. It's already hard enough not to dissipate with the different measures to reach the goal. You have plenty, and I think the focus is the most important thing. And then you have to be persistent. Never give up. This is, I think, one of the biggest advice, because it's never straight. There will be a lot of there are a lot of circumstances where you run against the wall, where and you should not give up. You have to go for it, and because normally the goals are reachable, and if you are persistent enough, there will come a circumstance, a tipping point. You call it in the tipping point theory. You call it tipping point. There's anything coming, and then there will be the breakthrough. If you just work in an intelligent way to reach your goal. with the tree planting, it was Davos. We tried to do the same. What happened in Davos? We tried 3 years before. We tried to do a conference in Monaco. It didn't happen. The conference was very successful, but it hadn't had the breakthrough that 3 years later by Davos happened. Yeah, we hadn't had a share in Davos. It was just that we tried to reach the same by ourselves, but yeah, you have to have the patience maybe.
Frithjof, I want to ask you a question about that. When you wake up some mornings,
yeah,
you're inspired and everything works. And then there's other days where you probably think, I've had enough. It's enough.
Sure.
What do you say to yourself to stand up again and keep going? Is there a psychology that when you feel like giving up, what happens in your body to say, I keep going no matter what? What is that? Is it a question in your head? Is it a strength? Is it that you're fearful of the planet disaster? What is it that drives you? Is it fear? Is it inspiration? Is it a question you ask yourself? What is it?
As I said before, I feel responsible. I feel this is a feeling of responsibility at the one hand side, and then I learned that you can really do so much if you just believe in what you do, and if you're not naive and not doing stupid things, but if you have an idea like tree planting, for example, or I had some other projects, you learn, or at least I learned in my life that I really could make a difference on the way through it. So I know when I don't do this, probably nobody would do it. That's something what makes me get up every morning and say, you have to go the next step and the next step, because, for example, as crazy as it is, nobody in the world was asking how many trees are growing on this planet. It was Felix. Felix raised this question, and we raised the question how many trees we still can plant, and we raised the question how many carbon dioxide they would exhaust. It was not a environment ministry of any of these 194 countries of the world. It was not a university. It was just us to raise this question.
Yes.
So it makes and I think if you have a dream and you think of go for it, because maybe nobody else will do it. And I learned in my life, because I gave up another project that I started because I wanted to support Felix, and I gave it up in a moment where I said never could be killed again, and it was killed. So I think it's if you believe in a dream, go for this dream, because maybe nobody else is going for this dream and will be not realized.
Frithjof, are there some people in your path that have really mentored you? Because, you know, Felix had a role model in Wanganamitai. And so have you had role models?
I think I was reading a lot of biographies. This was the most interesting what I was reading. So I think I have had a lot of role models who did inspire me. Each person in a different way, in a different characteristic way. And by reading biographies, I think I learned that it's not straight, and you really can reach it. So I think it was not a special person that there's
it was
wanted to reach this
people.
person. Yeah, different people.
Yes, and you know, when you look at the next generation and, you know, the younger people, do you feel that, are you hopeful, and I know that you'll reach the goal, but are you hopeful that you can see now a momentum in the younger generation? Do you feel that they want to push this forward?
Personally, I think we have three main challenges ahead of us. This is the population growth. The population is growing. We have 7.75 billion people. and we will be in 30 years, we will be about 11 billion people living on the planet. The second is the global injustice. There's a big difference between the poorest and the richest of the world. Imagine that half of the population, the poor half part of the population, if they put all the wealth on one side of the balance, we only need 7 people, 7 families of the richest part of the world to get the balance in balance. The balance. So this is incredible unjust with the situation that everybody knows about this injustice. Yeah, everybody has a smartphone and has an access to this information that the planet is in a very unjust situation. So it is, if a nation was as unjust as the planet, and there's no nation that is as unjust as the planet itself, we have had revolutions already. So we have a global injustice, we have a high growing world population, and the third major problem or challenge is the climate crisis. 10 years ago, I would have said, okay, global population growth and global injustice, because I was sure that we will solve the climate problem in Copenhagen 2009, but we failed to make a global contract. So since 2009, as we failed as humanity to make a global binding contract about climate crisis is becoming the most urgent problem. Climate crisis, if we don't solve the climate crisis, the other big problems like population and justice, yeah, I would not say there's no more need to solve it because we will have as much problem with the climate crisis. So the climate crisis is maybe not the biggest problem, but the most urgent. And we have to solve it, that we have a chance to solve the other problems.
Yes.
That's the fact. And so, and now there's a big question about, do we focus on the right things? Because let's say in Germany, we are 1% of the global population and we exhaust 2% of the carbon dioxide emissions. There are 2 ways. We could reduce in Germany or in Great Britain your half of the per capita carbon dioxide emissions as in Germany. But if we reduce towards the British emissions,
yes,
it would cost a lot of energy. I don't say we shouldn't reduce in Germany, but with the same energy, with the same time, with the same money, let's take a €1 trillion. Germany is rich. We could take €1 trillion every year, 100 billion euros as Germany, and start the biggest reforestation in the planet. With this reforestation, we would reduce 25% of the emissions. So a small country that is only 1% of the world population, only exhausting 2%, but we are exhausting double as average, we could reduce 25%. So there are 2 ways. Either we reduce our own carbon dioxide. I'm vegetarian. I have flight shame. I'm always driving by train. I have photovoltaic and solar thermic and battery and all this stuff. I do all this, but I think we should think global and act global. And the challenge ahead of us is how the people in Africa, the population in Africa will double in the next 30 years. There are 1.2 billion right now. There will be 2.5 billion in 2050 in Africa. And if Africa will go the same way as China or Europe or the United States of America, you have to keep in mind that in China, the population grew from the carbon dioxide emissions in China was doubling in the last 10 years. If just in 10 years, the emission of carbon dioxide doubled in China. If we have a similar development towards wealth in Africa with the same emission like China or Europe, there will be we will end in a catastrophe. So the solution of the global climate challenge is that we help the African people in a partnership working together, that they come to wealth without carbon dioxide emission as we do.
Yes. Yes.
So I think this is something what I hope that the young generation will understand, that it's not by reducing your own carbon dioxide footprint, but by thinking global and acting global.
So finally, you that's really powerful to hear, very valuable, Frithjof. And my question is, you've already mentioned some of the how, which is to inspire the youth. But how else? So how else do you feel that we can solve these problems of population growth? Is it education? Is it doing what China did and saying we can only have one child? Is it to talk more about it? Is it to get more money into people's hands? How do we solve this problem? You know, you're very big on acting, on planting trees, but also educating. So you have two major focuses. What do you think is the way that we can all help to solve these three massive, huge problems?
Of course, education is one thing, but as we learned, there's always the reduction of reproduction of the reproduction number. Yeah, if you don't get as many babies, it's always connected with wealth. As more wealth, as less babies.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. So we have to create wealth on the planet. In Africa, there's in the sub-Sahara area, there a woman has 6 children, 6.6 children. Yeah? And it's always related with wealth. So we have to create perspective. We have to create wealth. We have, of course, wealth you get by education. Yeah, and that's a challenge ahead of us. We have to create in Africa, because of the growing population, we have to create 20 million jobs every year for the next 30 years. Yeah, we have to create jobs. Reforestation is a job creation machine. That's the biggest economic program, because if we give some euros to some people in Africa, they can plant some trees, and they are the owner of the trees. And so we are creating wealth, for example. We also have to help them to get clean energy. We could use the deserts in Africa to create clean energy, and energy is wealth. Yeah. And if they have a lot of deserts, they can even export the energy to Europe, for example, because we don't have deserts. Yeah. So this is something very easy. The deserts are of no value, of no economic value today, but the deserts are the energy producing areas of the planet. And Africa is rich of deserts. So welcome, we can solve it. Just we have the money to create solar power plants. And right now in Africa, we are about to build 925 coal power plants, and not 925 solar power plants. Yeah, and that's a stupidity. We just have to go for solar power plants. There will be wealth in Africa, and also wealth in Europe. Yeah, that's it. So it is easy, but the biggest challenge is that the other side, the industry, 20 years ago, when the climate problem came up, the industry made one very, very clever awareness campaign, and they put the responsibility for climate to the consumers. They didn't say they didn't want to change, so they said, okay, let's make the billions of consumers responsible for the footprint. So we are out of responsibility. Yeah, and that's impossible. You and me, we cannot solve by our consume in the supermarket. We cannot change the climate. We cannot reduce the climate. The companies have to do it. Yes. But they made us feel responsible since 20 years. So we have to bring it back and tell them you're responsible.
Yes, that's really powerful. That's really valuable to understand. And You know, Frithjof, when you explain this, and I love it, you explain it in a way that all of us can understand. It's simple measures and really powerful. And I think you've also, what I love is you've explained it in a way that we can still have wealth. You know, people can still have a business. They can still go to school. They can still make money. But it's about doing it in the right way that heals our planet and creates a compelling future for everybody to have balance, rather than this, you know, super wealth and poverty. It's a balance. And also, I know that you do a lot of work with regards to understanding how government needs to change. You know, that's the government, we all need to change. So finally, my final question, Frithjof, is if there was one, you've given us a lot of advice today and a lot to think about. If there was one piece of advice that you'd like to give to everybody listening to this, what would it be? What do you think is the one important thing that we need to focus on in our non-for-profit sector or in our social enterprises? What do you think is the most important piece of advice?
Maybe two advice. The first advice is that you have to follow your dream, because it is your dream, and go for it. That's something.
Yes.
Don't give up your dream. That's the first thing, because I think that's the most important thing. And the second, we have to think and act global.
Yes.
Because we are a global family, and let's say all the three challenges, the global injustice, the population growth, and also the most urgent thing, climate crisis, we cannot solve on a individual, on a national level.
No.
Also, Corona crisis, we cannot solve it on a national way. Yeah.
No.
We are in one global. We are a global family, and we have to think global and act global. The most stupid saying is think global, act local. This is wrong. Yeah. You feel good that you have reduced your carbon dioxide, but think about the 1.2 billion inhabitants that will come on this planet in addition in the next 30 years alone in Africa.
Yes.
And this is, we just have to make mathematics and think about the global scaling, and think global, act global.
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much for your time. It's always great and inspiring to talk to you. Thank you very much, Frithjof.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.